So I'm a few hours late with this review. I was watching on three different screens at once the WWE Backlash 2023 pay per view, the beginning of the UFC pay per view, which was also tonight, as well as the Canelo Alvarez fight, which didn't come on till a little bit later on, but it was all happening on the same night. So this is a crazy, crazy weekend. And I feel like now that WWE and UFC are under one umbrella endeavor, this will probably never happen again. They'll either book a WWE pay per view on a different weekend, or they'll book it on a Sunday if UFC's on a Saturday, or they'll book an afternoon show. I just don't see this ever happening again. Not the companies are under the same banner, but these dates were booked well before the purchase. So let's talk about Backlash 2023, a show that was live from Puerto Rico with one of the better crowds of the year. You know, when you look back at the past few pay per views, Royal Rumble, and then No Way Out, or Elimination Chamber. I don't know why I still call it No Way Out. Elimination Chamber from Montreal had an incredible amount of crowd heat. WrestleMania both nights had a good crowd, and now this show, the pay-per-views have been on fire lately as far as the crowds really being into it. The Puerto Ricans were really into this show. They were into the surprises, which were all national heroes, and overall, the show, although it felt a bit weird coming off of WrestleMania, it was a bit of a step down from this big stadium show with Roman Reigns. Instead, it's a much smaller card. It definitely was a good show as far as like matches go, as far as the entertainment factor. It was a good little solid pay per view. Like, it almost reminded me of back in the day when we'd have those really good B pay per views that didn't really have the big matches, or they had some big matches, but they were missing some of the bigger stars. It reminded me of one of those shows. A good show, though, a solid show. And like I mentioned, a lot of the stars weren't on this show, but the people who were on it definitely carried it. We got a couple of really good women's matches, albeit predictable. We did get a couple of them. Bianca Belair and Io Sky, they opened up the show for the Raw Women's Championship. Io Sky was cheered much more than I was expecting, and she was awesome in this match. I mean, they're both great workers. It sucks because now that Bianca's been drafted to SmackDown and Rhea Ripley's going to stay on Raw, even though she's the SmackDown Women's Champion, they're going to probably do that really cringe thing they do where they exchange the belts, like what Becky and Charlotte did a couple years ago, and had that little backstage thing. Hopefully it won't get that serious, but I always find it really, I don't know, it's kind of lame when they do this. You know what I mean? It's kind of lame. Just, hey, you take my belt, I take your belt. It's just not my favorite thing, but she did go over. I actually, for a moment there, thought they were going to switch the belts, because when they had the rest of Damage Control come out to try to screw over Bianca, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Are they really going to change the belts over? So I didn't think it was going to happen, but for a minute I thought it could possibly happen. But going into the match, I just knew that it wasn't going to happen, and I was right. Now, the other women's match on the show, I want to talk about that real quick. Rhea Ripley, Selena Vega. Not as good of a match as the opener, much shorter match, but definitely more emotional because Selena Vega is Puerto Rican. She came out with a Puerto Rican flag. She came out to a huge pop. She was very emotional the entire time, both before the match, during the match, and after the match. And Rhea Ripley got a big pop too because the fans, I think, respected her. And Ripley won with the Riptide, and they had a couple of cool spots. There was one where Ripley went for the Riptide, and Selena Vega spun her into a DDT. Really good stuff there. It really came off like a solid TV match more than a pay-per-view match, but I like the fact that the show did not go long. And I think that might be because of the UFC. Now that Endeavor is in control, I don't think we're going to have shows that are going to be like I said, tonight was the last time this is ever going to happen, most likely. But I think they were cognizant of making sure that the Backlash show ended before the two main events got into the cage. I feel like that was done on purpose. Some of y'all are going to agree, but I do feel like that was done on purpose because these companies, man, they do things very, very meticulously for that reason. Either way, though, it was fine for what it was. It was fine for what it was. It wasn't bad, and it was one of Zelina Vega's better matches. Now, going back earlier in the show, there was a cameo from Savio Vega, and that got a huge pop. For those who don't know, Savio Vega is a huge hero down there in Puerto Rico, known as TNT. Been a major star there for several years, but he wouldn't be the only Puerto Rican star to show up on this show. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Seth Rollins versus Omos. This match went 10 minutes, and when you're looking at this, you're thinking, wait a minute. How could an Omos match be 10 minutes and actually be good? The guy, he's kind of clumsy. It's difficult to work with him because he's so much taller than everybody else. But Seth Rollins, man, they call him the mechanic for a reason. Seth Rollins figured it out. While the Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania between him and Omos was two big monsters colliding, this match was very different because here we have Seth Rollins taking the Shawn Michaels role where he's like the smaller babyface trying to overcome the giant heel. And I think he worked Omos into one of his better matches. I really, Omos was great at doing the no-sell. Omos was right in there with him. This could have been a complete car crash, and it wasn't. And I think that is a testament to Omos actually wanting to improve. That's one thing we have heard about this guy. Like him or not, he wants to improve. I think the issue with him is not necessarily that he's lazy, although some have assumed that. I don't like saying that about somebody who I don't know. I think the issue is he's just so much taller than everybody else that it's like Khali. Like Khali had difficulty walking after a while, and when you're working matches with guys who are half your height and you're not super athletic, if you're not like a super athletic guy, you're gonna have some challenges. Now, Seth Rollins won with a pretty cool super. It was like I guess like an atomic version of the curb stomp. I'm not really sure why they even booked this match on this show to begin with, except to give Omos something to do. It kind of did feel that way. I don't know if that was a Vince McMahon call or what, but with Rollins winning here, he's right there in line for the World Heavyweight title, the Raw World Heavyweight title, the new one, because he's one of the guys who I picked to win that thing. So I could definitely see that happening. Then we had a triple threat match. Austin Theory versus Bronson Reed versus Bobby Lashley. Again, not a very long match. A little bit under 7 minutes, so it did feel a bit rushed. Again, not bad. Kind of house show-ish. I did like how on this show, I mentioned this earlier, they didn't give every match like a long time. They gave some matches more time than others, especially the co-main event. We're going to get to it. But Theory is a guy who they really, I think, are trying to bring along nicely. I don't know if this dude's ever going to be a main eventer. I know that some people really like him. They think he can do it. I don't know if he's ever going to really hit that upper echelon of being a main eventer. Last year, he kind of grazed the main event scene for a little bit, but as far as him actually being a main eventer, don't know, but they're definitely trying. He's gotten some big wins in the last few pay-per-views. He beat John Cena. He won the Elimination Chamber. Here he retained against Bobby Lashley and Bronson Reed. So it does feel like they are bringing him along as being this guy who's kind of this weaselly champion who's not going to be easy to beat, but will eventually get caught. And I like that idea. It's kind of the classic 80s heel. He runs away. He escapes with his title every show. Clean or not clean, he does it. And who's going to beat him? Kind of like Roman, except Roman actually definitively pins people, whereas Theory, oftentimes there's shenanigans involved. This finish was kind of predictable a mile away. Lashley speared Bronson Reed. Theory runs in, throws Lashley off, gets the 1-2-3, and that's the victory. It's a pretty predictable finish, I would say. So I mentioned Ripley versus Vega. Again, she got the post-match standing ovation. Then we had the San Juan Street Fight, Bad Bunny, Damian Priest. Both these guys are Puerto Rican. They have, of course, the history from the match they had at WrestleMania. And for a guy who, again, and I want to, of course, obviously Bad Bunny got a huge reaction. But for a guy who is someone that is new to the business, he's only had 3 matches. He's right up there with Logan Paul. Bad Bunny really gets it. And obviously these matches are all super set up. They're very much rehearsed. he doesn't really make that many mistakes. He really doesn't. He's super athletic, and the thing about him is he's such a successful and wealthy, you know, like talent musician that this wrestling stuff isn't even necessary for him. This is more like he wants to do it versus he has to do it. I mean, Bad Bunny's still a hugely successful, star, and here we go. Like he's doing these wrestling matches, which he doesn't need to do. So they brought out the gimmicks in this match. We saw kendo sticks, we saw trash cans. The crowd chanted Benito, which is, I believe that was when Savio Vega came out. I'm pretty sure that was Savio Vega's thing. And then we had the big surprise of Carlito appearing. Now, Carlito, for those who don't know, is a member of the legendary Colon wrestling family. His father, Carlos Colon, the biggest star in Puerto Rican wrestling history, a guy who is like the Jerry Lawler of Puerto Rico. The guy's been on top in Puerto Rico for decades and decades and decades and decades. Had legendary feuds with Abdul the Butcher and several different Americans who came into the island. So Carlito and the Colon family are super famous, like just super duper well known and respected. And so when Carlito came out, massive reaction. Then, of course, the LWO came out. I don't know if this means that Savio Vega and Carlito are part of the LWO, but one thing I will tell you is Carlito looked like an absolute monster. I don't know if it's because he's in the ring with Ray and surrounded by Ray and Bad Bunny, but I don't think so because Damian Priest is a pretty big guy. He's a pretty big dude. And this guy, Carlito, was absolutely jacked. I've never seen him that big. If Vince McMahon, and he probably knew this, if Vince McMahon sees him, bro, and how big he was, we might get another Carlito run. We might get a Carlito feud with Judgment Day out of this because the dude looked good. I mean, he came back in the Royal Rumble a couple of years ago, but here he really looks solid. And a character who, outside of Puerto Rico, he never really got a huge push. He had that first feud with John Cena back in 2004, did a few things here and there, but in Puerto Rico, that's like his home turf, and he's treated like a major star there. He would not have gotten a pop this big in any other town except maybe in Puerto Rico. So Bad Bunny ends up winning the match. He hit the Canadian Destroyer and pinned Damian Priest. I don't know how I feel about this because it's a part-time celebrity guy pinning a guy from the main roster, and that's always a weird look. But at the same time, they probably wanted the Puerto Rican fans to be happy, so they booked that. I don't have a problem with it, except I'm curious about where it goes. I just find it weird that Priest's just going to lose like that. Like, there has to be more to this, And I wonder if the Ray Dominic story is going to continue because this sprung off of that. So are they going to do a rematch with that? I mean, they're on different brands. I think they're on different brands. I lost track of the Hall of Fame, of the draft, so I don't even remember. I know where some guys are going, but I lost track of most of them. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So, 6-man tag team match, the bloodline of the Usos and Solo Sikoa against Matt Riddle and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This is the match that got the most time. I was not able to see this entire match because I had other things going on. I did see some of it, though. And the story of the match is that the bloodline is sort of having problems. Now, understand that both in storyline and in real life, all three of these guys are brothers. Jimmy and Jay are twins, obviously, and then Solo's the younger brother. So they're having debates, like they're having not debates, dissension here. Like they're not getting along. A couple of times where they teased that Solo was gonna hit one of the Usos. The story I think they're trying to tell is that without the tribal chief there, that the bloodline's kind of a mess, and they're still recovering from losing the tag titles to Owens and Zayn. So I do wonder if they're going to keep that feud going with Owens and Zayn, or if they're going to transition over into like an Usos versus Roman and Solo feud or something like that. The story here is that even though the bloodline are literally brothers that have known each other their whole lives, they were beaten because they couldn't get along by the team of Matt Riddle and Owens and Zayn, even though they're not even brothers. So obviously the story, I think the idea behind this is sort of a cliffhanger in a sense to where, like I mentioned earlier, Roman's going to have to come to SmackDown to straighten them out. So I expect to see Roman on SmackDown in the next couple weeks. I know that Roman, I don't know, but I think he might actually be booked for the Saudi show. We know he's definitely booked for the Money in the Bank show. So I feel like with that, we're going to see Roman very, very soon. This is just the beginning of a new phase of the Bloodline story. And to be honest, I'm not as into it. I'm not as into it as I was when Zayn was there, so they're gonna have to really do something to kind of draw me back in. I thought the Zayn stuff was well done, and I wanted to see where they went from here, but I'm not sure if I really care about Solo and them fighting. I'm not really sure about that. Also, I forgot to say that I did screw up a minute ago because I said that the family lost. No, they won. Like the Bloodline won the match, but they were losing the match because they weren't getting along. And it's almost like Solo did all the work at the end when he tagged himself in and stuff like that. So DJ and Solo are kind of having their own little issues. So the Bloodline did win the match. So my apologies if a minute ago I said they didn't win, because I know I was like, wait a minute, no, I meant to say they did. They did. The Bloodline won, but they were losing because they couldn't get along. That was the story. Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar. This was, I don't know how I feel about this. It's longer than the usual Lesnar match, but shorter than the traditional kind of Cody match. A lot of the match took place outside the ring. Cody attacked Brock with a chair, going after the monster, before he knew it was coming, which is smart. Eventually, they got to the ring and the bell rang, and then he hit the disaster kick, which was super well done, but he went for the big Cody cutter, blocked into a German, and then, of course, Brock started doing Suplex City on Cody. And so they went back and forth for a bit. Lesnar took control. Eventually, Cody did hit the Cody cutter, but not before Lesnar hit the exposed turnbuckle, and the dude started to bleed. Now, this is the first time we've seen blood on a WWE show outside of what happened with Finn Balor. This is the first time we've seen blood to where it actually looks like Brock may have cut himself open. It looked like it was a blade job, especially later on when he wiped, like after the match ended, when he was wiping his face with a towel. We could see a little slice there. So I'm not sure if this was Hardaway or not, but the blood in the match really added an effect to it. And the reason why I'm bringing up the blood is because now I wonder, now that Endeavor owns WWE, now that Ari Emanuel is the new real boss of this parent company, does this mean that we're going to see blood in WWE again? I know for a long time, Nick Khan did not want to have blood because they were making sure that the sale would go through at the absolute highest possible margin. But now that the sale has gone through to Endeavor, does this mean we're going to go back to seeing blood once in a while on main events? I personally feel like using blood once in a while is a good idea. I think having blood in every main event, like what Jon Moxley did for about 6 months, is a complete joke. Like, it's just the worst thing you can do. But the fact that here we have a main event with Brock, Brock likes to put blood in his matches. I mean, go back to his run even in the 2010s, or he was always doing this. So I like the effect a lot. They teased Cody winning with the Crossroads, but it was a 2 count. And then Brock hit the F5, and for a minute there I was thinking, oh boy, like, is Vince McMahon going to really kill this guy? But no, Cody kicked out, and that's good. So the finish was that Brock, with blood all over his face, and keep in mind, they did not stop the match to patch up Brock's blood. That's why I'm thinking this is a big deal. For the Hell in a Cell match with Edge, they stopped the match, They literally had the EMTs come in off camera to hide Finn Balor's blood. And I feel like for this match, they didn't do it. And that to me means something. That actually means something, So he put him in the Kimura, and then Cody sort of rolled forward into a cradle and got the 1, 2, 3. So I know some people didn't think it was that satisfying of a finish. I know some people think that Cody should have beaten Brock with the Crossroads 1, 2, 3 in the middle, but I actually kind of like this because Cody beats Brock, who is an NCAA champion wrestler, by out-wrestling him and pinning him. Like, I like that finish. It wasn't the traditional finish, but I think it worked for me. The question now is, where do we go from here? Will we see more Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar matches? Are we going to move Cody and Brock onto different feuds? There's a lot of unanswered questions here. Did we even get this match just because they wanted to give Cody something to do? And why didn't we see Cody go up against Solo? Like, I was expecting that to be the next feud. Maybe they will do that. I don't know. But the door is now open for them to move on with the Cody storyline. And on commentary, they said that finishing the journey is not over yet. So obviously, the idea, like I said before in a couple different videos, is they're probably going to build up Cody to overthrow Roman Reigns at next year's WrestleMania. It just feels like they're doing that. Roman's going to get the 1,000 days. They're going to do all that stuff. But eventually, Cody will defeat Roman at WrestleMania next year, capping off WrestleMania 40 with Cody Rhodes being crowned. That's my guess. Of course, a billion things can happen between now and then. Hopefully, no injuries, but you never know. Like I said, not a bad show. It felt more like a decent SmackDown episode, maybe with a few extras, like the surprises, than an actual, like, huge pay-per-view. But like I said, not every pay-per-view has to be WrestleMania Royal Rumble level, and this gave us good matches, and I didn't spend a lot of time with them. So, I mean, I wasn't bored, and that to me is a good thing. So, thumbs up for Backlash. Up next is the Saudi Arabia show, the Night of Champions. I will not be around for that. Don't expect a review for that because I'll be out of town. I'll be in Vegas for Double or Nothing weekend. So I may come back and talk about the shows when I get back, but I won't be doing a review of the Saudi show the day it happens. I'm not going to be around. So anyways, that's it. Y'all take care. See you in the next one.